Most marketing meetings don't go in circles because people have bad ideas. They go in circles because nobody's using the same decision framework. And that's a much bigger problem. Because when a campaign gets reviewed, approved, and then reopened 2 days later, it's not a creative issue. It's a structural failure. Teams think they are making solid decisions, but in reality, they are just creating temporary agreement. And temporary agreement always breaks. It's not a decision, it's just a pause until your work gets reopened again. In this video, I'll show you why marketing meetings keep looping, how unclear definitions, opinion-driven feedback, and missing frameworks create endless revisions, and how to replace that chaos with structured decision-making that actually holds. And once you see this, you'll start recognizing exactly why meetings feel productive, but nothing actually holds after the meeting is over. Let me start with the core idea. Most marketing teams do not have a creativity problem. They have a decision architecture problem. That means the issue is not a lack of ideas. It's a lack of shared structure for evaluating those ideas. When no clear, shared framework exists, something predictable happens. People interpret the same work in different ways. They judge it by their own individual standards, which are never mentioned out loud. They approve the same work for different reasons. And then later, because no one was actually anchored to the same rationale, the decision gets reopened. You thought your work was done, but it's back. Meetings like this are less about making a strategic decision and more about managing a rotating set of interpretations. And the bigger the team gets, the worse this tends to become. Because now the campaign isn't just being filtered through one perspective and one set of shared criteria. It's being filtered through multiple perspectives, each based on different assumptions, different context, different backgrounds, different priorities, and different definitions. Worst part, none of this gets said out loud. Without shared frameworks, teams don't really make decisions. They create temporary alignment. And temporary alignment is fragile. It holds only until the next person enters the room, or until people return to the room with a slightly different mood, slightly different pressure, or slightly different context. That's why so many approvals do not hold. They were not built on clear structure. The decision was not attached to any set of clear criteria. They were built on momentary consensus. And those are two very different things. One of the biggest hidden reasons marketing decisions become messy is something I call context asymmetry. This is when people use the same words but mean completely different things. Take a word creative. In one meeting, 5 people might use that word. And every single person might mean something completely different. For one person, creative means a clever headline. For another, it means visually bold design. For another, it means a new campaign concept. Or something emotionally engaging. Perhaps it's something that competitors haven't done yet, or a simple collaboration with a trendy influencer. So now imagine a discussion where someone says, "I don't think this is creative enough. We need to be more outside the box." That sounds like feedback. But structurally, it's not clear feedback at all. Because the rest of the room may not share the same definition of the word. And this is where confusion starts multiplying. Everyone thinks they are talking about the same issue, but they are not. It's not even one meeting. It's 5 different meetings happening at the same time. Everybody's using the same language while operating with very different meanings. That creates fragmentation, and fragmented discussions almost always lead to circular meetings. Because the team never fully resolves the actual disagreement. They only resolve the surface-level conversation. Then later, the unresolved interpretation gap shows up again, and the work gets reopened once more. This is why shared definitions matter so much. Without them, meetings don't reduce confusion. They amplify it. Now, let's look at what happens when teams don't have a decision framework. Usually, the meeting defaults to a very simple question. Once the available options are presented, the person leading the meeting asks the worst possible question. "So guys, what do you think?" And at first, that sounds normal. Reasonable, even. But structurally, it creates a huge problem. Because now the spot is on everybody else. Now everyone in the room feels pressure to contribute something useful. And if they don't have a shared framework to evaluate the work on, They fall back on whatever they do have: personal taste, aesthetic preference, past experience, gut instinct, vague emotional reactions. That's when feedback starts sounding like this: something feels off. It needs to be stronger. Let's be more out there. I think we could do something more interesting. The problem with comments like this is not that they are malicious. The problem is that they are not operational. They do not describe a specific issue tied to a strategic framework. They do not point to a well-defined problem. They just express a feeling. And feelings, when unstructured, create more iterations without more clarity. You leave the meeting like this to work some more, but you have zero clarity on what needs to change in order for the second round to go any better. This is one of the main reasons marketing work gets revised endlessly. The team is responding to opinions rather than resolving clearly identified strategic mismatches. And the more opinions you collect, the more versions you create. But more versions do not automatically create better campaigns. More often than not, they just create more exhaustion. So why does this keep happening even after something gets approved? Why do teams say yes in one meeting and then rethink everything in the next? It's because the original approval usually wasn't tied to a shared strategic rationale. It was tied to a temporary agreement. And temporary agreement is weak. If a new stakeholder joins later, they bring a new lens. If leadership revisits the campaign, they bring new concerns. If performance pressure increases, the team suddenly becomes less confident in earlier choices. And because the decision was never anchored to a framework, it becomes easy to reopen. This is a really important point. Without shared structure, approval often isn't approval. It's just a temporary pause, a postponement. It's the team saying, this feels acceptable for now, but acceptable for now is not the same thing as this clearly fits our positioning, our audience awareness level, and the value depth we want this message to communicate. One is a mood, the other is a strategic rationale, and only the second one creates durable decisions. If you want marketing meetings to stop looping, decisions need to be tied to frameworks that still make sense next week, next month, and when new people enter the conversation.